Touchdown, Oregon. Whittington.
With the coaches and players you want to hear, your feedback on the contest, scores and highlights from across the country, Ducks postgame traffic reports, and analysis from your game day crew. This is the Ducks postgame scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan. Oregon Ducks football on 1080 The Fan is brought to you by Coors Light. Mountain Cold Refreshment. Choose chill. Celebrate responsibly. By Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved. By Mods PDX. The future of building is here. By ZoomCare. With more than 20 neighborhood clinics in Oregon and Southwest Washington, ZoomCare offers convenient access to same-day urgent and emergency care, plus an expanded primary care team, currently accepting new patients. Schedule or learn more at ZoomCare.com. Bellagio's Pizza. Dough and sauce made fresh 6 days a week, right here in Wilsonville. And proud to be serving Northwest communities since 1996. Order online or through the app. By Multnomah County Behavioral Health Division. Don't let the game play you. For more information on problem gambling prevention and treatment resources, visit opgr.org. By Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration, in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com. Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, within winning distance. Audi Wilsonville, offering unmatched service to help you find the perfect car. Online at AudiWilsonville.com. Laurelhurst Market, more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. By Unitas Community Credit Union. Join the team at Unitas Community Credit Union to help you reach your financial goals. And by Langdon Farms Golf Club. There's no better course in the Northwest for year-round golf. Book your tee time at LangdonFarms.com. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Buckley and Will Ortner. The Ducks postgame scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan.
Welcome into another victorious edition of the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. For the 12th time this season, a victorious edition. Your number one Oregon Ducks beat the hated rival Washington Huskies 49-21. And restore order in the Northwest once and for all, at least once until next year this time. But I am so elated to have gotten over on the Huskies, to have finally got this monkey off our back. No more national championship games for you. It's going to be our turn for a while. 49-21. Let's fire it up. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz over there with you. We'll have Anthony Newman and Dusty Hare coming up in just a little bit. But a big one for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. Dan Lanning had 60% of his career losses to the Huskies going into this one. 3 of the 5 losses, and finally, he gets a win over them as well. Will, how are we feeling after today's win, and what are your reactions to how this game went down?
This is exactly how you expected this game to go down. Obviously, UW was going to have a little bit of fight. They were going to have some trick plays loaded up, ready to go. They thought they might have tricked you by coming in with the young quarterback, having Williams come in instead of Rodgers. But Oregon just kind of weathered the storm. Yeah, you weren't able to score on your second drive. You scored on your first one, found a way to get down there, and then you put up 21 in the second quarter. You score 7 in the third. It was just about dominating and winning. You play at a higher standard than what UW plays at this year, and it needed to look that way because you saw a bunch of teams mess around with their rivals, Ohio State, and not play up to their standard, and it bit them in the butt this week. You have to be proud of your guys that that's not what happened to you.
I love the effort from Schultz. I know you do as well. Your thoughts on tonight and finally getting a beat down over UW?
Well, first, let me just say as a Ducks fan, so excited to see this 12-0 season. Got to get my old 12-0 shirt out. I know other Duck fans are already putting them on, and I'm going to buy whatever they put out. I am so stoked and just cannot believe as a 35-year-old lifelong Duck fan that we are here on the precipice of this and just after such a long accomplished season. But I got to give Husky fan a little bit of crap, and I got to give the Huskies a little bit of crap.
Yeah.
Trying to pull out some sort of little fakey, we're going to put this guy in that you don't know much about in DeMond Williams. That was your ace in the hole, Washington? Guess what? Jed Fish is now 0-1 against the Oregon Ducks, so I don't want to hear about Dan Lanning being 0-3 leading up to this game because guess what? Here in a couple more years, it's going to be 3-3. And even after Husky fan loses this game, you are going to see them on social media bitching and saying, Dan Lanning still lost to them more than the Huskies lost to you. Well, guess what? That was with Kalen DeBoer. He's gone. Jabbar Muhammad came to Oregon. We have one of your best defensive players from last year, and you could not do anything to stop Oregon at the line of scrimmage, nor could you from the start of the game. It was obvious what they roll off like a 70-yard, 4-minute drive to start the game to score, and outside of like one planned, scripted drive and then maybe another one where some defensive lapses, the one time that they happened other than a fumble in the game, and you were able to score in the second half, like that was it. And it was just so nice to see. So I'm done hearing from Husky fan, and I'm done seeing all the social media crap about how they're a better program than Oregon. They're just not.
You can reach us on the fan text line, 503-864-6326. RJ is already in. He says, hello, longtime listener, first-time texter. My name is RJ. That's not true. It's not his first time. I'm a Duck fan. That was fun. Huck the Fuskies. They mean nothing. Bigger things to come for Oregon. The Ducks are legit and have everything it takes to win it all this year. This is the season. This is the team. Go Ducks. Love the sentiment from RJ. Want you guys to keep the text rolling in tonight as well. You can also comment on our YouTube live stream at 1080 The Fan over on YouTube. But Will, to Schultz's point, this got off to a great start with Oregon's first drive, but then it did feel like they were, I don't want to say on their heels, but didn't seem like they were their best defensive selves in the first drive they had to defend. But something clicked right around the end of the first quarter, and the second quarter seemed like an absolute avalanche. What did you see change that kind of shifted the landscape of the game?
Well, Oregon started putting a spy on Williams. Williams is an incredible runner. And look, I've been watching a lot of quarterback play for a lot of years. Don't start counting your chickens. That Williams kid is legit. And Jed Fish, he can recruit. So don't come in here all of a sudden and start looking into the future. The future that you should be looking forward to is the Big Ten championship game after you celebrate and revel in your victory here over your rivals.
24 hours.
Right. You should celebrate.
You saying I should calm down a little?
This
Okay.
one.
No, we're not calming down tonight, Schultz.
I think you should. Celebrate today. Don't start counting your 2029 victory yet, is all I'm saying. But what Williams was able to do when the pocket was collapsing early in this game was he was able to extend, and instead of looking for people down the field, he just ran it, much like Jalen Milroe did against LSU. I'm just going to tuck the ball away, and I'm going to run. I'm not going to try and do too much. I'm not going to extend to try and get a wide receiver open later. I'm going to run the football. And that's why UW was able to sustain that very first drive until Oregon was able to stop them and kick a field goal. And why on their second scoring drive after the fumble, they were able to get a first down, get themselves into a better field goal spot, and make that one as well. But what Oregon started doing is they just started blitzing the young quarterback, and they left Betcher there to be in that spy position, so that way when he did escape the pocket, they could go chase him down. And then you also had guys like Tatum Tuioti, Mateo Uyunglele, and Jordan Birch. Weird. It's almost like I've said their names a bunch this year. They were just dominating one-on-one matchups, but they were also taking the correct angle to the quarterback. They didn't run too in front so that the quarterback could spin out and get back behind them. They didn't run too far behind him so that he could move up in the pocket. That's also a great job by your interior D-line of pushing the pocket back, and they just dominated that UW offensive line. When you have 10 sacks in a game, that isn't just on the quarterback of UW. That isn't just on the O-line of UW. That's on your defensive line and your linebackers that you put in the blitz scheme dominating one-on-one matchups. You had the better team in the trenches. This is why you brought in Dan Lanning. This is why you went and got Tosh Lapoy. Lanning brings in aggressive defense, and Tosh Lapoy knows how to coach D linemen, and they dominated your rivals in this game.
We're going to talk a lot more about what Oregon did in the trenches today, because just a prolific performance with 10 sacks from your defensive front. I'm not just going to give credit to the D-line, because among those recording sacks were guys in the secondary and the second-level linebacker as well. So just a whole host of Ducks in on the defensive action. But I loved the way that it felt like, and I'm not as apt X's and O's as you are, Will, but it felt like there was a commitment by around that time, the start of the second quarter, to just not allow UW to get to the edges anymore. We are going to set those. You're not going to get around them, and we're going to make you play up the middle. And they couldn't do it, is what it felt like.
Yeah, well, early on, you could see on that first drive, there were a couple times where Uyunglele, I felt like he could have beat the tackle that he was going up against UW, and he was playing on both sides. So I felt like there were multiple times where him and Birch felt like they couldn't do a true rush because they were worried about Williams getting out of the pocket and worried about his legs. And they should be. The kid runs a legit 4.4. You can see it while he's moving around in the pocket. Like, he is fast, and he's only going to get faster. He's only going to get better. So you have to get yours while you can. And eventually that D-line just wore them down. The other thing I think that you see in this game that has been evident throughout the entire year, but to me it just popped out, is what an excellent job this defensive coaching staff can do at making adjustments once they find something that works. They're going to try a bunch of different things early on. Are we going to bring pressure? Is it going to be man coverage, and that's when you bring the man blitz? Are you going to be in zone coverage, and then that's when you bring the zone blitz? Are you going to trust your D-line to just win one-on-one and say, we can rush 4 and we can drop everyone else back into coverage? Do you need to have that spy player? Do you have it as Bossa, who's a former safety? He's a little bit quicker. Or can you leave Betcher in there because he knows how to take angles? He's a center fielder for baseball. So he knows how to put himself in a position to succeed. So they work around multiple different plays early on, figure out what the other offense wants to do. Then they create their game plan or a slight adjustment off of their original game plan, and then they dominate. And I felt like you saw that early in this game because eventually Coach Lapoy just said, hey, don't contain rush anymore, Uyunglele.
Yeah.
Don't contain rush, Birch. We're going to dial up this QB, and we're going to go after him with as many players as we can because you're going to win a one-on-one matchup, and I'm going to bring 5 when they have 6 guys. I'm going to bring 6 when they have 5 blocking. I'm going to get 1 free, and another will get free because they're going to win their matchup. You're in for a long night.
It did feel like it was like the first quarter was assess, the second quarter was contain, and then the rest of the game was freaking attack. And I absolutely loved it. P1 Shane is in. He says the thing to me that separates this team from past Duck teams is this defensive front. They are just nasty in the trenches, and they get more impressive each game. I couldn't agree more, and we're going to spend more time talking about the trenches later on. But the other thing I've felt for a long time about this Ducks team is they kind of go as Jordan James goes, it feels like. When he has things rolling, there is an attitude to the way that they play ball. You see the O-line start to lean on people. They say what he does, see what he does, and they just build off of each other. I love the way Oregon established the run tonight. Whittington got in on the act too, but those hog mollies up front with Jordan James running behind him looked awesome.
It's the difference between a top tier, one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the nation and an offensive line versus a defensive line that's more average, right? Like last year and the year before that, UW was able to compete with you because they had homegrown offensive and defensive line talent. They had Trice on the edge. He was able to get a pass rush. On that offensive line, you had multiple guys that went high in the draft, right? This last year, sought after O and D linemen. They won the Joe Moore Award. They were the best offensive line in the country.
Yep.
And now you see them take a step back because they lost all these players. And what everyone's going to talk about is like, oh, they lost Michael Penix. Oh, they lost Romo Dunze. Oh, they lost McMillan. But really the part where UW's getting hurt right now is the D lineman that they lost and the offensive lineman that they lost. And when you go up against a team that is as deep as they are, as Oregon is on the defensive line and the offensive line, you're just going to start bullying teams. You bullied Illinois, you bullied Michigan, and then in this game, you got to bully UW. It takes a while for that O-line to start grinding people down, but eventually they do, and when they do, that's when you see those big 8, 9, 10-yard carries, and it felt like in the second half, every single time Jordan James touched the ball, you are going to be set up worst-case scenario at a 2nd and 2.
Lots more to get to on this program, including Anthony Newman coming up next, plus a little bit of a monkey wrench in the Big Ten standings and the Big Ten title game. New opponent on deck. We'll get to that. But before we do any of it, the Ducks Game Day secret score.
Ducks Game Day secret score.
The Ducks Game Day secret score is 1,120. Do you know what that number is, Will? Schulte might know what that number is.
1,120. Is that the total yardage over?
That is the number of days it has taken Oregon to restore order in the universe against UW.
I love that.
And beat them again, because it's been 1,120 days since they were victorious over UW. That stretch is now over.
That's a lot of days.
It's a
dude.
lot of days, man.
I can't count that high. I
Yeah.
don't have the fingers.
I used AI today to do that.
Did you
I
actually?
said how many days ago is, and I plugged in the date that they last beat UW
ChatGPT.
with the, I believe it was the Verdell walk-off is the last time they'd done it. And so
right.
that is your secret score. You don't need to remember the whole reason why. You can, though, because it's nice to get that 1,120 days marked down to a 0 now. But when you hear that Ducks game day cue to call in the 7 a.m. hour, Monday morning Dirt and Sprague, you have the chance to win the $100 gift card from Laurelhurst Market. It's more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. Anthony Newman is coming up on the other side of this break. You're listening to the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan. Here's Schultze with the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. Looking pretty heavy out of Eugene on I-5 northbound. Beware, trying to get out of the stadium's a very slow slog. Getting onto I-5 from there is a pretty slow one as well. A couple of smokies on I-5 north. Getting out of Eugene towards Coburg, because everybody's still in that area. Once you get past there, it is clear, but do beware smokies near Albany on I-5 north as well. 38 degrees in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 36. Tomorrow, sun with a high of 50.
Have a special somebody on your shopping list that loves to go.
Williams, 5'11", 187, a freshman. From that pistol look, he's got Jonah Coleman, the running back, behind him. Three receivers strung out to his left. Tight end right, gonna hand it off. Bang! That ball came out, and Oregon has it. Fumble, Huskies. Ducks have it at the 19-yard line.
This is the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz here with you. What if I told you that the Oregon Ducks could beat UW and Alabama in the same afternoon and evening combo? How would that make you feel?
I feel like that would be the makings of a multiple championship possible season.
Yeah, that's like a unicorn. that you just
It
named.
seems hard to do, but the Ducks men's basketball team just took down Alabama in the championship game of the Players Era Tournament in Las Vegas. A nice win for Dana and company, but this isn't a basketball show, it's a football show. And joining us now, the former Ducks football star, the star defensive back, and newly crowned high school state champion defensive coordinator of the Westland Lions, Anthony Newman. Anthony, first of all, congratulations. How the heck are you?
I'm great. It was a great weekend for football.
I bet it was.
Won the state championship, and then the Ducks win. They beat the Puppies. So I'm just ecstatic right now. I'm feeling good. So and Will got to call the show, call the game. So I know he was saying some good things about me during the championship game. So.
I got you. I was pumping your tires. I got you. Only good things over here.
Well, Anthony,
that's good.
Obviously a killer effort from Oregon today. Dan Lanning getting his first win over UW, the only team that he'd played before that he hadn't beat. And it all came, we feel like, at least from the first couple segments of this show, from the defensive effort from the Ducks today. What did you see from that veteran Ducks defense?
Well, in the pregame, I talked about, the front seven had to show up, and they did. Washington's offensive line, they lost everybody in the portal. A couple guys who went off to the NFL, and then the backups left. So they had nobody. Their offensive line was really weak, and it showed. I mean, when you get 10 sacks, come on. And then you have, 16 tackles for losses? Mm-hmm. Are you kidding me? Yeah. So who's blocking? Like, what is going on with that offensive line? And, Will, you probably can answer that. But I was watching. This was crazy. Every time he snapped the ball, Derek Harmon was in the backfield almost every single snap. Mm-hmm. I was counting them. I was taking notes. I'm like, okay, there's one. Okay, there's two. It's like, are they going to double team him? Or can the center get the job done? No. And that right there creates problems for the offense right away, because now the quarterback has somebody, the back of his center is coming right back at him in the face. So you had a young quarterback running for his life. He's not he needs to throw the ball better. Yeah, he can run, he can take off, but you can't sustain that as an offense. You can't keep running your quarterback. I mean, he led the team in carries today. You'll beat him up. So it was a good job of the Oregon defense, but also the offense showed up as well.
Anthony, I guess this is more of a question for the entire NCAA, but I mean, after some of the different showings or lack thereof that I've seen from Georgia, from Tennessee that we've seen, obviously Ohio State, I felt like today, is this Oregon defense the best defense in the country right now?
Well, I believe so. I mean, tell me what team has a better defense or that's playing better right now. And you always have to talk about, how are the teams playing at the end of the season? Are they getting better? Do they look good? Are they in a flow? Oregon's defense, it was kind of funny. Me and Andy were sitting in the press box, and I was going, this defense, they walk around with some swag. Mm-hmm. They know they're good, and they're playing like they're good. And it's like, okay, these guys are flying around. I mean, it's a fun defense to watch. And when you look at, Georgia's defense last night, come on. I mean, they couldn't cover anybody. They're playing Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech hasn't run the spread offense in never, and they're trying to run it, and they don't run it well. And Georgia had a hard time dealing with them. So I'm looking at, the top teams in the country. Is Penn State's defense better? They could be, maybe stats-wise, but I don't think so. I know they got a defensive edge rusher who can get after the ball, number 11. But other than that, when you look at Oregon's defense, they are built from ground zero, which is the defensive line. Mm-hmm. And then you're talking about the second level. Okay, the linebackers, Jeffrey Bossa is a dude, had a great game on senior day. And then the back end. You have corner safeties, some guys playing like a rover. There's a lot of dudes on that defense that are making plays that you can say, hey, yeah, they have probably the top 3 defense in the nation.
Anthony, so we're talking to Anthony Newman, the former Ducks star defensive back and NFL vet. We put the bow on an outstanding end of the regular season, a 12-0 campaign, exactly what you set the goal to be. Week to week, you take care of business, but now you move on to the postseason, and as we know, that's going to be a completely different animal. You have a conference championship game followed by a brand new playoff. How much tougher do you expect this road to get for the Ducks, and what makes you feel like they're equipped to handle it?
Well, I think it's still there's the same message that Dan Lanning is going to say. It's not about the other team that we're playing. It's about us.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a team in the nation that can beat us. The only team that can beat us is us, and that's what he's telling his team. So, the difference between the regular season and playoffs and all this this bracket stuff is that there's no game tomorrow. you got to win to move on. Right. Otherwise, you go home. So there's no, okay, let's look back at the mistakes. Let's get better for the next week. No, there's no next week. This is it. So there's a little like, okay, is everybody going to tighten up a little bit, or are they going to get, you're losing and everybody's going to start yelling at each other? Things like that will show up with different teams. But Oregon is still going to roll. They are a well-coached football team, and you can see that. And when you see other coaches, you hear other coaches say, this team is well-coached, and they have dudes, that's a tough team to face. It really is.
Anthony, from your championship perspective, as a defensive coordinator, how would you attack Penn State's offense? If you're Oregon's defense, are you loading up the box, getting ready for that run game? Are you trusting your secondary on the outside? What are you doing?
I don't trust Penn State's quarterback, so that means I'm going to load up the box to stop the run. And I got corners that can cover man-to-man. That's the same thing we did with Lake Oswego.
Yes, you did.
We said number 2, their running back's not going to beat us. So we're going to load the box. Corners, have a good day. You're by yourself all day long. We'll see you later. Go cover those receivers and don't let them catch any deep balls, explosion plays. That's what Oregon's going to do. They're going to load the box. And you can load the box because you have safeties who play like linebackers, who can come up and make tackles, come up and take on blocks, block the strut, get off the block and make a tackle. Why don't you let this quarterback who, Penn State's quarterback, he's all right. He's okay. Okay, let him beat you in the pocket. And he's not going to be in the pocket because he's going to be running for his life because you have a defensive line who can get after quarterbacks.
Yeah, it absolutely feels like a prove-it situation for Penn State's passing game. You stop the run, you make them prove it through the air, and until they do, that's the way you roll. And we have a lot more to break down on the upcoming Big Ten championship game against Penn State. That's next Saturday at 5 o'clock, and we'll break it down with Anthony Newman on Monday evening at 7 o'clock on Ducks Roundtable. Anthony, once again, congratulations on the state title for the Wesleyan Lions, and congrats on the win over the Huskies today as well.
It's a great day. It's a great day, and I'm going to finish it off with some leftovers. A little light plate, a little small plate,
Beautiful.
And then I'll be happy.
Good weekend. A good weekend all around. Anthony Newman, thanks so much.
Hey, thank you, guys.
That is the Ducks legend, Anthony Newman, former Ducks defensive back and NFL star as well. Coming up, want to talk a little bit more about the trenches. It wasn't just about the defense, but the offensive line as well, paving the way at road grading against the Huskies' defensive front. We'll get Will Ortner's expert offensive line analysis on that. Coming up next, but first we toss it back over to Schulte, who has the Ducks game day traffic and weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Appreciate it, Buck. Still very heavy out of Eugene to be expected. A lot of fans actually stuck around for quite a bit. So it's slow going once you get out to I-5 northbound, and then passing Coburg, you're tapping your brakes even more. Beware, there are a few Smokies in the Eugene area, as well as just south of Albany on I-5 northbound. 38 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 36. Tomorrow, sunny with a high of 50.
The Fan 411.
Log on to 1080thefan.com to
your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz here with you after the Ducks improved to 12-0 on the season with a 49-21 win over their rival, the Washington Huskies, setting up a date in the Big Ten championship game next week. The Ducks had already punched their ticket, but now we actually know the opponent, and no, it's not Ohio State. I was going to get to this a little bit later in the show, but since we got to the jumping off point with Anthony about what next week could look like against the Nittany Lions, might as well get into it a little bit here. Huge surprise today as Michigan, who was nearly a 3-touchdown underdog by kickoff at Ohio State in Columbus at the Shoe, wins 13-10 in a stunner. They hold Ohio State without a first down from the 5:59 mark of the third quarter on. An incredible upset, fisticuffs at the end of the game, a new chapter in that history rivalry.
Awesome.
But the biggest thing for us here as Duck fans and Duck followers, they're not playing the Ducks in the Big Ten championship game anymore. Now it's the Nittany Lions, because after Ohio State lost, it was Penn State's to lose. If they won, they're in. If they had lost and Indiana won, they're in. But Penn State takes care of business. So now you know who you're playing. A team you did not get on your regular season schedule this year. A team who a lot of people have criticized their schedule this year besides Ohio State, who they lost to in a one-possession game. But how do you make this matchup for the Ducks and the Nittany Lions? What are the things that have either impressed you or that you think the Ducks need to be wary of when it comes to facing this team, Will? And what are the things that aren't so impressive?
Anthony mentioned it right away. Defensive end Abdul Carter. You got to find a way to slow that man down. He's had 4 games this year where he's had multiple sacks. He is a one-man wrecking crew. You have Mateo Uyunglele. You have Jordan Birch if you're the Oregon Ducks. Abdul Carter might be a slight step above. But the thing is, they only have one of those guys. Now, the defense is still a typical James Franklin, Penn State, hard-nosed defense.
Yeah.
If you watched any of that Ohio State game, you know that they came to play. In fact, that defense, they scored as many points as their offense did.
Got
right?
a pick six early in that one, yeah.
You might say they scored more if you're going to give them the PAT as well. So you have to be ready and be prepared for your offense at times to get bogged down, to get stopped, to slow down. There is a reason why they're the number 4 team in the country. They're probably going to be the number 3 team in the country by the time that you play them. They are very good defensively. Offensively, I'm a little higher on Drew Aller, the quarterback, than Anthony is. I think he can make all the throws. You saw against USC, he had a game where he threw for multiple interceptions. He was not having his best game in the first half, and then in the second half, he's the reason that they came back in that game. Well, him and their tight end, Tyler Warren. Get ready, Oregon fans, if you haven't watched any Penn State, and I understand why you might not. Tyler Warren is going to be all over the field. He's going to line up at quarterback. He's going to line up at fullback. He's going to line up at running back. He's going to line up at wide receiver. He's going to line up at tight end. Oh, by the way, Buck, I don't know if you know this. He has a play where he lined up at center. That's how versatile this player is. He's going to be the best tight end in the country. He's going to win that award. He's unbelievable. And what Kotelnicki and that offense likes to design for him, they're going to find a way to get him the football. You're going to have to match up somebody to stop him. I don't know who that is because of the different positions that he plays. I don't know that you can just say, well, Bryce Betcher is going to be our lockdown on him, and he's going to take him away. Can't necessarily
spy him the way you would a more
typical tight end, a typical receiver where you can just, Muhammad's going to be on him. You're going to have to find a way to stop him. But the best way to stop him is to get pressure. It's a good Penn State offensive line. I don't know that it is the best offensive line that Penn State has had. They've turned into a little bit of O-line U. If you can get Uyunglele, Tuioti, Birch after the passer, Aller isn't the most mobile. He can move a little bit, but he's not the most mobile. He's not going to run around like Williams did tonight. You can get after him, get a couple sacks on him. I don't like this receiving core for the Nittany Lions. They don't run past people. They're big. They're strong. They're going to try and push you around, but I think Oregon has the secondary to combat that. I'm with Anthony. I would load the box, try and stop the run, and in this game, if the Ducks offense can get up 14-17, and that's a big ask, I don't know that Penn State has the offensive firepower to come back. Penn State wants to play this game at a 17-14 clip, a 21-17, right? If it goes above probably 28 points in this game, and the Ducks score that 28 point, you're probably going to win this football game.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I really think if you can get to 3 touchdowns, this thing might just be yours.
I think 4 to be safe.
I totally agree with you. I think if you get the Ducks' best defensive effort in this game, you could hold them to 10 points. I mean, I'm not saying
I don't disagree,
and that's not to say that's the expectation, but I think it could be that good. It could be that dominant if everything aligns the way that you want it to. Let's get back to this huge rivalry victory over the Washington Huskies, though. The Ducks winners 49-21, and we talked plenty about the defensive line early. They registered 10 sacks. They made things absolutely miserable for the freshman quarterback making his first start, Damon Williams. But let's flip it over to the other side of the trenches. The Oregon Ducks offensive line, they only run blocked for 222 yards at 6 yards a carry and didn't allow a single sack. As impressive as 10 is on the other side, to not allow 1 on your side and to run for 6 yards a clip, what did they do well today?
Well, take away the Sadiq run, because that was a 1 rush for 2 yards. Every single other rusher averaged over 6 yards a carry. Jordan James, 6.6. Whittington, 7.4. Riggs, 6.3. Gabriel, 6.7. You were murdering them with your offensive line. What the offensive line was doing a great job of, when they were running that power play, or they ran a couple gap scheme plays as well, and all that is they're just trying to get a double team down on that nose guard and get a pulling offensive lineman, whether that is a guard or a tackle, depends on what the team wants to do. What Oregon was doing is they were getting their guard out into space. That guard is able then to get onto the linebacker, and they were knocking people completely off the ball. That double team didn't have to break apart from their double team to get to a backer. Normally, if the backer fits one way, the center might step off and take him. If he fits the other way, then the guard is going to step off and take him. They were taking the defensive line of the Huskies and putting them 5 yards in the lap of the linebackers. Now the linebackers aren't allowed to run free. They're trying to get around their own player before they can even take on the block of the offensive lineman that's going to step off and take them. Jordan James, he's little now, so he can hide a little bit underneath that offensive line, but he is powerful. I don't think I saw a single run today where it was a single defender that took Jordan James down. He ran through everyone, and it's almost to the point where I feel bad for other teams.
No.
He runs physical. He runs angry. It's similar to a LeGarrette Blount or a Marshawn Lynch, where I swear he'll see green grass and then he'll turn to go find a defender. He will cost himself 3 yards so that he can go run through someone's face, and it's awesome as an O-lineman.
I said it to some of my buddies, some Duck alums during the game. It feels like when he sees defensive backs and he's running downhill, that it becomes a hunt for him, and he is hunting to hurt you. Like it's just like he goes out of his way to find the contact and dish out the pain, and I absolutely freaking love it. It's outstanding. We need to keep this thing rolling. We need to get to Dusty Hera, who was on the sidelines for this one. We'll try to get to him on the other side of this break. Plus, we also have the Bellagio's very best player of the game coming up, and we need to talk more about what the college football playoff picture looks like after this big Ducks victory. 49-21, the Ducks winners, improving to 12-0 on the season. We'll get to Dusty on the other side, but first we will toss it over to Schulte, who has the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Appreciate it, Buck. Looks like I would say the majority of drivers making their way out of Autzen Stadium are on I-5 now. Still some remnants slowing, though, trying to get from the stadium to the highway. A couple of Smokies, I-5 North, getting out of Eugene, passing Coburg, and then I do still see one I-5 northbound going through Albany as well. If you're getting up to Portland or you left early, right around just before Woodburn, seeing a couple of Smokies there also. 38 degrees in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 36. Tomorrow, sunny and a high of 50.
We're back with a complete recap of today's game.
3 receivers out to the left. Snap, handed off. James, touchdown Oregon. Right up the middle. a no-doubter.
With the coaches and players you want to hear, your feedback on the contest, scores and highlights from across the country, Ducks postgame traffic reports, and analysis from your game day crew. This is the Ducks postgame scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan. Oregon Ducks football on 1080 The Fan is brought to you by Coors Light, Pacific Office Automation, Mods PDX, Victor Rico's Mexican Food, Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, by Zoom Care, Bellagio's Pizza, Multnomah County Behavioral Health Division, Audi Wilsonville, Laurelhurst Market, by Unitas Community Credit Union, and by Langdon Farms Golf Club. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Buckley and Will Ortner. The Ducks Postgame Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan.
Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, and Jordan Schultz back here with you after the Ducks are winners 49-21 over the Washington Huskies. It is the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show, and a correction is due. I said off the top of my head, I thought that last Ducks win over UW might have been the C.J. Verdell walk-off. Not true, corrected by the great Kyle Plitt, who was listening to this program. No, the last win was 26-16 over the Huskies in 2021. The key contributors that day, Anthony Brown for you at quarterback, Travis Dye with 211 yards on the ground. So even though he defected later to USC, a nice day for the former Ducks running back. Now that we've got all that cleared up, going to bring in our buddy Dusty Hara, who was down on the sidelines for this one. And Dusty, I feel like we usually start here, and tonight it's important we start here as well. But what stood out from your vantage point and from your view this evening on the sidelines?
Well, I think rest was really valuable for this Oregon football team, and we saw what the 8-week gauntlet kind of wore down on this team, and what we saw was the efficiency was back, the defense looked faster and looked far more healthy. I think the nagging injuries were really adding up for Oregon at the end of that 8-week run, and they looked a lot more crisp. I mean, from start to finish. I mean, I don't know. The no Whittington fumble where you try to hurdle two guys, maybe trying a little bit too hard, and a missed field goal from 55 yards at the end of the half. Other than that, I mean, you were 7 for 7 in the red zone. You only saw 8 third downs the entire night, and you had the ball for a long stretch. I mean, it was a pretty efficient night offensively that we were hoping to see from Oregon.
Dusty, let's go back to that defense. They obviously have 10 sacks, but they were going up against Williams at that quarterback position. He can scramble a little bit now. What was that defense doing that allowed them to get so many sacks against a quarterback that can run and is mobile?
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job with him because early on he was having a little bit more effectiveness with those legs, right? Mm-hmm. And it was noticeable that it was first read, second read, tuck the ball and run. So the adjustment Oregon made was, all right, we're going to drop 7. We're only bringing 4, but he has no idea which 4 are coming. And that was where headaches really started to come into play for DeMond Williams. He is going to be a hell of a football player, and he is going to be a really good quarterback in the Big Ten. But right now, this was his first start, and I think Oregon really took advantage of mixing up the looks, mixing up the fronts. They did not just the shifts, but they did a hezzy-hay shift where the guys all got up, they shifted one gap to the right, and then before they got set, they shifted back to their original spot. His head was spinning, and it was where he didn't know where the pressure was coming from, and I thought Oregon was really disciplined in the way that they filled and scraped, right? Because you want to set an edge, you want to set your contain, and then scrape down the line. And I thought Oregon didn't do a great job of that a couple of times, but for the most part, they did a really good job of bottling him in and taking away those running lanes that he thought was going to be there.
So in relation to stopping and spying this quarterback, Bryce Betcher played a huge role tonight, and I caught the interview that you had with Bryce after this game. I don't know if you have any more information than what we heard on the air, but I at least need you for our audience to relay what's going on with Inglorious Bastards, Bryce Betcher, and a baseball bat.
Yeah, so the captains came out, and they come in through the tunnel before the rest of the team does. And Tez, Bryce, Patrick Herbert, and oh boy, I'm spacing on who the last one was. But they all come walking down, and I'm going, is Bryce Betcher holding a baseball bat? Which is totally fitting for a guy who was drafted in the 13th round by the Houston Astros.
Of course.
But he started just swinging the bat, and he was like hitting himself in the head in the helmet with it when he was walking out of the tunnel.
Love that.
And I was like, I have no idea what is going on here. And then he gets his first sack, and he does the baseball swing celebration.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I asked him about it in the postgame, and he said that it was Coach Lanning's idea. He gave him the bat, and he said he showed him a clip from Inglourious Bastards throughout at the beginning of the week, and he said, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to bring the lumber." So, I know I'm looking forward to Ducks versus them because I have no idea
How
where
much
this
of that
is
can
going.
you show? Oh, boy.
Oh, man. I love that Coach Lanning is just like this big cinephile. Like, he has all the movies he pulls out. Gladiator, everyone's doing the thumbs up, thumbs down. Now he's pulling out Inglourious Bastards. That's fantastic. Dusty, we saw Tez Johnson get back in the lineup for the first time since the Michigan game. What did you notice with how they were using him in this game as they worked his way back? But also, how did Tez look to you running his routes, catching the ball? Is he looking like he's healthy?
To be quite frank, I thought they were using him as a decoy for the entire first half. You would see him go in motion, and he'd flare out just into the flat, and he would be doing jumping jacks, and three guys would go with him, and they'd go somewhere else with it. We didn't see any balls kind of pushed his way in the first half, and then in the second half, Washington stopped paying attention to him, and you saw him kind of get loose a few times. I was really concerned about the level of health and where he would be at. But then when he showed up as not even on the injury report for the availability report before the game, it really raised my eyebrows because usually when you see these guys go from out, they will be questionable on the injury report, a la Jordan Birch, who was listed as questionable today. With no restrictions on the availability report, I was like, all right, I guess he is going to be in full tilt boogie. Didn't return punts, except for the one time they used him as a decoy on a punt, where they stacked him in front of Gary Bryant Jr. to draw attention on the punt return. But I feel like they wanted to limit the contacts with him, and maybe as the game went on, pops in, and my shoulder feels okay. I'm excited to see what he does in the Big Ten championship game and moving forward, because that what we saw from him was he was not restricted. He was even backup, and I was surprised at that because I thought he would be the first guy to get the hook. But first half he was a decoy. Second half, I mean, they went to him obviously for the touchdown, a big third down where he made a catch on the sideline and drew a hold. He's a weapon, man, and his speed kills. I think Tez is going to be totally fine moving forward.
So, Dusty, going into this game, 60% of Dan Lanning's losses had come to the Washington Huskies. Hard to believe, a staggering number, but he finally gets a win against them. He's not going to make anything about that, but how big do you think that feels for him and his staff to finally kind of flip over the one opponent that they couldn't get over on?
I think it's big. I think it is big just because of the storyline that people made it. To do it emphatically in the way that they came out on both sides of the football. I mean, when your offense has 0 negative plays on the night, that is with authority. 7 for 7 in the red zone, like I said earlier, only 8 third downs, and then your defense setting a school record for sacks. I mean, it wasn't like Dan Lanning has a Washington problem. Kalen DeBoer in that Washington team was really damn good for a couple of years, one of the best teams in the country. But, yeah, I mean, Dan Lanning now has beat every team he has faced with the exception of Georgia. And he's in his third year as a head coach, and I think that is pretty impressive when you put the context of he's playing in a new conference for the first time as well. But I think that beating Washington, it meant a lot to him. And I think more so like the reaction of the seniors and the guys that were on the team last year, that win meant a lot to them because that was their last hurdle to climb. especially last year's team, right? The guys that were on the team last year, they had a bitter taste in their mouth with 2 losses to UW. So getting over that hump, you heard from Tez, you heard from Bryce Betcher in the postgame. It means a lot to beat Washington, and I love that there's rivalries there. You got a little hate in your heart. That's good for college football. That's good for fan bases.
Yes, sir. Dusty, just get you out here on this one. Can you already taste St. Elmo's Steakhouse?
Oh, man. We were in Indy for the Purdue game, and we got in so late, St. Elmo's was closed when we got in. So,
well, when do you get in this time? Do you get in with a little extra prep, a little extra time this time?
Well, that's where you're going to do your prep, of course.
Look, I don't even have like a travel itinerary yet for Big Ten championship, but I'm assuming like if it's like most road games and it's going to be a late kick for the Big Ten championship, so you don't need to change the body clock at all. I'd imagine we leave on Friday, but I don't know because I don't have that yet. But if it's Friday, hopefully we get there with enough time because I need to see what the shrimp cocktail is all about. I need to see where all the business is done at the NFL Combine. I have to get to St. Elmo's.
Yeah,
you have to.
I want one of those cocktails as well. Dusty, 2 quick things for you. One, need a vibe check. You're the only man we talked to who is behind the scenes around the locker room. What are things like behind the scenes tonight? And then additionally, what do we got coming up on the program?
Well, the vibes are very high. Vibes were really high. I mean, guys, like 12-0. They're the only team that's undefeated in college football right now. And like the weird thing about it is that it's not like they acknowledge the 12-0. It like they drink the Kool-Aid, man. And whatever it is about the 1-0, they just celebrate that 1-0. And they haven't had one in the loss column yet. So vibes are through the roof. And this week on the program, well, Cole was down here today, and he was boots on the ground, and he was wrangling interviews for us for the future. But we only saw it fitting that this week we bring on the great Anthony Newman. He's a state champion head coach.
Heck yeah.
He's now a 6-time state champ in the high school football ranks, and he's a University of Oregon legend and the OG number 8. So Anthony Newman will be on the pod this week.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, we will look forward to listening to that, as well as Danny and Dusty from noon to 3, Monday through Friday, as we get set for this Ducks Big Ten championship game next Saturday against Penn State. Thanks for the time, Dusty. Travel safe.
All right, fellas. Have a good one.
That is Dusty Harry. You hear him on the sidelines. You hear him on the Ducks pregame show. You hear him here with us, and you hear him, Danny and Dusty, 12 to 3, right here on 1080 The Fan, Monday through Friday. Coming up on the other side, I want to talk a little bit more about something you got into with Dusty, and that is the Tez return. How much does that straw stir the drink? Did the offense look any different to you? Did we have anything that we need to go to the doctor to before we get into our Bellagio's very best player of the game? We'll get to all that coming up on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. But first, we'll toss it back over to Schultz, who has the game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. Still heavy out of Eugene on I-5 northbound. At least an extra 15 minutes trying to get out of town. And beware, a Smoky getting north of Eugene towards the Coburg area. A little bit of slowing in Albany as well once you get to that area. If you're up near Portland or getting towards that, I-5 north, seeing a couple of Smokies near the Woodburn area. 38 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 36. Tomorrow, sun and a high of 50.
Bellagio's Pizza, a local favorite
Station.
Trips out to the right, one alone left, snap, straight drop to throw. Steps, dumps a little pass out. Whittington's going to try to jump over and run into a smack tackle at the 25-yard line. Whittington was going to hurdle, and it didn't happen. And the Huskies have a man down, slow but getting up.
They act like there's a fumble.
This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Well, making plans to zig, and then I hear the drops there, the playback from Schultze, and I decide I want to zag instead. I was going to get into a couple things about Tez coming up here. But I also want to talk about the things that the Ducks might need to go to the doctor about, because as much as today was a dominant win for Oregon, there are a couple things that still need some cleaning up, one of which, maybe not hurdling over two defenders at once when you don't need to. That Noah Whittington fumble was an interesting one, to say the least. If there's anything, Will, let's just get it out of the way. If there's anything from today that didn't impress you at the Ducks, that you think didn't look right, what was it, or was there anything?
There wasn't much, to be honest with you. I thought the offensive line dominated in the trenches. You were running. I mean, you literally averaged 6 yards plus a carry. Every single rusher did. I felt like Dylan Gabriel, for the most part, did what you needed him to do. He was highly efficient, 16 for 23. He didn't force anything. If it wasn't there, he tucked it and ran it himself. No turnovers from him, 2 touchdowns. No Whittington, don't try and jump over 5 people. Like, this isn't trampoline at the Olympics. Like, just stay on your feet, take the hit. I get it. Like, he's an athlete trying to make a play. It's hard to tell an athlete trying to make a play, hey, stop being an athlete.
And I am sympathetic for that. He's just trying to do as much as he can, but you also
right in your own zone. You don't need to do that. That's an unnecessary risk. Your risk to reward is what? You got 3 more yards because of airtime.
Right.
Doesn't really make sense there to me. But receiving wise, he had 3 or 4 catches from 4 dudes. And then you have another 2 or 3 that have 1 and 2 apiece. Like, you spread the ball around. No one was locked in for the most part. Defensively, what didn't you do?
Yeah.
UW couldn't complete a pass. They couldn't throw a pass in the second quarter. They couldn't run the football. Your defensive line looked dominant. Your linebackers were flying all over the place making plays, and your DBs locked their wide receivers down. There's not a whole lot to complain about.
Well, so let me ask you this, because I think if you had to pick nits and look for things, one of the things that I was initially frustrated with, and hard to be again when you get that kind of defensive performance, was the drive to end the first half. I thought that Oregon looked like they had it absolutely rolling, and then okay, the other team's trying to win the game too. I get how that goes, but I would like to see them, I guess, finish off what was a nearly flawless second quarter and not allow that drive at the end. But that's part of the game. That happens. The other thing is I feel like, whether it's that fumble or whether it was, there's an Evan Stewart drop early in this game that cost them
on third down.
A first down.
Yep.
Though these marginal plays, they don't matter very much when you're blowing out mostly inferior conference opponents. Those little mistakes are going to mean a lot more when you start your postseason football, I feel like. And because inevitably at some point your margin just gets thinner. You can't afford against the very best to make those mistakes, even if you're 99% good on everything else.
Yes, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, I was the first one to be ripping on Dylan Gabriel for his red zone interceptions that he had early on in the year. I just felt like in this one, in a rivalry game, like you kind of held your breath there after your second and third drives where you're like, what are they doing? You drop a third down play, then you have to punt, then you have the dumb fumble. All of a sudden it's 6-7. With the way all the other rivalry games were going this week,
it made you
gonna
pucker a
go
little
sideways?
bit.
Yeah, 100%. But then it felt like Oregon got back to what they did best, and it's just be highly efficient at doing your job. How do you execute? Do you execute at a 90% level? And if you do, then you can play for the Oregon Ducks. And if you're executing at 90% of the time, you're going to put up a lot of points and win a lot of football games. For the first time, I think, probably in like 2 or 3 weeks, I felt like the Ducks played similar to how they played against Michigan and Illinois, as opposed to like when you think about how the Ducks played against Maryland and how they played against Wisconsin. Like Illinois, Michigan, even when you didn't score, it's like, hey, there are good things to build on this drive, and then you built on them and you won. You were never in doubt. It never felt weird.
Yeah, you never felt like you weren't going to roll it.
It never felt clunky. When you look at the Maryland game, that game felt clunky. Even though you won big, it was clunky.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, there was no point of that game where you felt good because you just kept playing with your food all game. You just got lucky at the end, and maybe lucky is the wrong word, but you were able to finish better than Wisconsin was able to finish. So it felt like you kind of got back to more of that Illinois, Michigan of you are rolling, you are going to win, and there's never a doubt of it.
Can I add really quickly that just the ability of Oregon to get it done in the trenches? It really shows the growth, I think, of the program. But ultimately, trying to get to a point where you're in a new conference, it's kind of funny. We're seeing like old Pac-12 stuff become new in the Big Ten.
Yep.
But just the battle that they fought from the start of the game to the finish, it was obvious that like it's kind of hard to find some stuff to get upset about. But like I guess we'll go with like the fumble, on the offensive side of the ball. Like the defensive side was so strong, I can't find anything to poke holes in. So I'll just say the fumble and Dan Lanning, which he shouldn't have to do this on the first drive of the game for Washington, but Dan Lanning not calling a timeout and getting the refs to review that big catch by Washington, which I don't think it actually was a catch, set him up for that field goal. I would like to see that, immediately be snuffed out. And no, once again, that's on the refs. That's not on Lanning. He shouldn't have to do it, but I would have liked to see that.
I think it was a good no challenge.
You think?
It's close for sure. And I wouldn't crucify someone if they did challenge it, right? Because that wide receiver is catching the ball with 1 foot down as it's hitting his hands, and then it's coming up. It's very quick, right? And in a lot of those situations, referees are just going to call that a catch because it's easier to review it as it being called a catch as opposed to it being called incomplete. That being said, I didn't hate that Lanning didn't challenge it.
Okay.
I felt like it was close. It was bang, bang. I felt like it was a catch.
Couple things I want to get to. Guys that were on the mend, people that were instrumental in this team's success early in the season that we've either seen in limited action or in no action at all. I think we saw some great things and some really encouraging things out of Tez Johnson tonight, which Dusty talked about, but also out of Jordan Birch. It felt like he was back, and I know that we've talked a little bit off the air about whether Oregon might have been holding him back, holding him out, whether he could have gone if needed, those types of scenarios. But he looked like the type of player that he was early in the season in this game tonight. And I don't know what you saw from Tez. I'm interested in your perspective on that as well. But seeing him be the player that we've known him to be, at least in the second half of tonight's game, super encouraging on both sides of the ball, I thought.
Yeah, I was wondering if Tez was going to be one of those, hey, you're going to get 15 to 20 snaps, you're on a pitch count,
right.
Take care of his shoulder. Because, look, this game really didn't matter other than just your pride. Like, if Oregon loses to UW in this spot, they're still playing in the Big Ten championship game.
But
there's a
lot
spot
there. Your undefeated season, beating the rival.
100%.
So
there's a lot of pride there. There's not necessarily a playoff implication, I guess I should say. That being said, I was really impressed with what Tez did. I mean, you haven't played since the Michigan game, so you've been out essentially a month or so, right? And he doesn't really miss a beat. You see that Tez's presence opens up the offense for everyone else. Trayshawn Holden was able to have multiple catches where he had a big one that went for about 40.
That was really good to see. Couple breakout explosion plays for him.
I mean, he's, half an inch away from scoring a touchdown?
That was a hell of an effort and really close to 6.
And one of the times where we just ripped on Noah Whittington for jumping and trying to hurdle people, that was a great job by him, and the risk is worth the reward if you get in the end zone. Terrence Ferguson has a big catching day, right? And then Tez Johnson, as the defense gives him a little less of that hyper focus on him, now he's able to make some plays, make some catches, found a way to get into the end zone. I felt like this was a game where, hey, we're going to use him as a decoy. And then when he's open and he's in single coverage, we'll get him the ball so that he gets his feet a little bit wet. We're going to dip him into the pool so that way we don't chuck him into the deep end when you have to go up against Penn State because you're going to need him. And then Jordan Birch, this felt like Jordan Birch was finally healthy for the first time since the Ohio State game. Now, even when he came back after his injury after the Ohio State game, but before he re-injured it against Maryland, he was making plays, but it wasn't it seemed a little more laborious for him, right? Like he wasn't quite as smooth. He wasn't quite as fleet of foot. It felt like finally with that extra rest that he was able to get by getting, essentially the last 2 weeks off, taking the Wisconsin game off and then the bye week off, it felt like he was able to get off the ankle, let the ankle truly heal, and then he could go back to having that same explosion that he had at the beginning of the season when we were talking about him as maybe leading the entire NCAA in sacks. I mean, shoot, if he doesn't have that freak injury in practice, the Ohio State week, it's kind of mind-boggling the numbers that he could have. He has 8.5 sacks right now, and he has, 3 to 4 games that he's missed? Oh, and then, by the way, Mateo Uyunglele, he just got to 10 sacks as well this game.
Well, that's a perfect jumping off point for our next segment because I honestly don't know where it's going to go this week. Often I have an idea, but we have the Bellagio's very best player of the game coming up next, and there are a whole host of characters that award could go to. We're going to find out what Big Will Ortner thinks about that and who deserves that award coming up next. But first, we toss it back over to Schultz, who has the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. Still heavy out of Eugene on I-5. Not quite as you get off the Stadium Street, what is that there? Van Nuys, excuse me. Martin Luther King Boulevard on to the interstate. That's actually fairly clear. But when you get up to, that's Van Dyne, that's what I was thinking of, or Van Dune up in Coburg, you're still looking at a very, very heavy drive, at least 10 minutes, just kind of extra traffic stuck in that area. Looks clear, though, through Albany. Maybe a couple of extra minutes, but not much. But Smokies, beware. I-5 northbound in Albany. 37 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 36. Tomorrow sunny, then a high of 50.
Guys, it's finally here.
An Odyssey Sports Station. This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan.
Throws, end zone, caught, touchdown. Trayshawn Holden with his 7th touchdown reception of the year.
It's time for the Bellagio's Pizza Very Best Player of the Game. Pay attention. Our expert panel will select the very best player of the game. And when you hear the text to win cue in the noon hour of Monday's Danny and Dusty Show, you could win a free pizza from Bellagio's.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation Post-Game Scoreboard Show, your number one Oregon Ducks, the only undefeated team in the nation, and it remains that way as they improve to 12-0 with the 49-21 win over the Dogs. And now it's time for our Bellagio's Pizza Very Best Player of the Game. Will, lots of characters it could go to this week. Who is it going to go to this week?
Got to give it to the big senior tight end, Terrence Ferguson. He has 4 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown. Now, that's not the most electrifying stat line of all time, but, Buck, Terrence Ferguson became the all-time receptions leader for a Ducks tight end in this game. He was able to pass Ed Dixon on that list, and he was able to put himself in a tie for first place for tight end receiving touchdowns with that touchdown in this game. You're a lifelong Duck. You've been in Eugene for years, your entire career, and way to finish it out on senior night. Terrence Ferguson, Bellagio's very best player of the game.
Yeah, now tied with the great Josh Wilcox for 15 career touchdown receptions for a tight end. He'll have a chance. He's got more games coming. We know he has at least 2 more games ahead of him with a Big Ten championship game and a college football playoff game. I've been really interested to see how Ferguson has played this year just because it feels like it's been a little bit of a roller coaster for him in that it wasn't gangbusters from the beginning. It felt like Tez was getting all the shine offensively. Not that anyone on this team needs the shine. He certainly would not be one to ask for it, but he wasn't as much of a focal point as I thought he would be early. He became more of one, and then he goes down with appendicitis of all things, has to miss a couple weeks, comes back, proves he's tough as nails, and now he becomes, when Tez was out, a more favorite target of Dylan Gabriel's. Those guys obviously really close. I've been impressed with how he has just kind of continued to respond to changing circumstances this year, and you get the same effort out of him every single game. His hands are reliable. He can block the hell out of some linebackers, and it feels like he can run people over in the open field. I love everything he's brought to this team, and I think he's kind of an unsung hero for them offensively.
Yeah, I feel like Terrence Ferguson, this wasn't exactly the type of season that he expected. At least I didn't expect for him.
Right.
No, it hasn't been a bad season. I mean, yeah, he doesn't have as many touchdowns. Like going into the year when I had heard that he was 2 touchdowns away from tying 3 from breaking the tight end receiving touchdown record, it was like, oh, he'll do that within the first 4 or 5 games. And you know what? Sometimes when you're that obvious of a target in the red zone, the other teams double cover you. And there's other guys that get single coverage, and that just seems to be what Dylan Gabriel has been taking advantage of. I would never be one to poo-poo on Gabriel's decision-making for the most part, aside from a couple bad turnovers that he's had. So I wouldn't jump on him there. But I mean, 31 catches for Ferguson, 442 yards. He's still averaging 14 a clip. And most of his catches come at important times in games. It's third down.
Absolutely.
And you need it. Against
it's
Wisconsin.
Third quarter, it's fourth quarter.
4th down against Wisconsin. When you are trying to keep a drive alive, they just jumped around on you going into the 4th quarter.
That might have been the play of the
Dylan
season.
Gabriel go to?
Yeah.
Right. He goes to Terrence Ferguson. So while the numbers aren't as inflated, I would say that the value of Ferguson has inflated because of the high-pressure situations you go to.
And listen, here's the bottom line. You play for a team like Oregon now who's trying to build an absolute monster personnel-wise. You're going to be competing with some of the other best football players in the college game for some of those touches, for some of those catches. So it's not a knock to say, oh, he's only got 31 catches, but you look at the 14 a clip and the way that he's able to be involved in key moments like you mentioned. I think it's an excellent pick. It's and tonight represents just the full career body of work for him. An outstanding career for Terrence Ferguson, and excited to see what he will do in this year's postseason. The Bellagio's very best player of the game, brought to you by Bellagio's Pizza. Remember Terrence Ferguson, and when you hear that text to win in the noon hour of Monday's Danny and Dusty, you could win the free delicious pizza from Bellagio's. We got to keep things rolling here. Like I mentioned, there were other guys who were worthy of this award tonight, and some guys that we still haven't talked about yet. We'll get to some of that next, plus the top 25, the playoff picture, and a preview of Penn State. That's all to come here on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. But now it's time to toss it back over to Schulte for the Ducks game day traffic and weather. Every 10 minutes brought to you by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. We're still looking at slowing I-5 northbound getting out of Eugene up towards Coburg. That is due to a possible accident or fender bender. Can't quite see it on any cameras, but I do see a lot of backup on that part of the highway. Beware, cops are in that area. Looking up towards Albany, I-5 north has a smoky right before you get there, and some slowing through Albany. Another smoky I-5 north near Woodburn as well, but free and clear getting up to that point past Salem. 37 in Portland. The Ducks post-game forecast calls for a low of 36. Tomorrow, sunny and a high of 50.
Football season is back, and that means Ducks game day traffic. It's never fun. Isaac Robb.
Snap, back to throw, straight drop, looking left. Throws it, end zone, caught! Touchdown Oregon, Des Johnson. And he was looking for him all the way. Looking for him all the way.
This is the Pacific Office Automation Post-Game Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation Post-Game Scoreboard Show. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz here with you after another victorious evening. The number one Oregon Ducks win 49-21 over the Washington Huskies. They improved to 12-0 on the season, and they already had their ticket punched, but now they can set their eyes on the Big Ten championship game next Saturday, 5 o'clock in Indianapolis, and it'll be against Not the Ohio State Buckeyes, but the Penn State Nittany Lions. Going to get into more of the top 25, the playoff picture, and that Big Ten championship game coming up in just a minute. But first, a couple other top performers from tonight, and guys that I feel like maybe we haven't even given enough run to yet. You mentioned this as an aside, and I didn't realize that he had achieved this milestone. Another huge game for this player tonight, as a part of an already huge season, maybe an All-American season. Mateo Uyunglele balled out again.
Yep, he's your second leading tackler. He has 6 total, 3 solo. He's got 2 sacks. He's got 2 TFLs. The guy was flying around there multiple other times where it's like Mateo's just about to get there, and then, Tatum Tuioti got that sack. Jordan Birch got that sack. He is a wrecking crew unto himself. We talked about this, or maybe I have in my own car to myself. The biggest thing that happened for this Oregon program was Dante Moore decommitting when Dillingham left, and Coach Lanning took a lot of that NIL money that was set aside for Moore and used it to grab guys like Woodard, but more importantly, to go in and grab Mateo Uyunglele. Mateo Uyunglele is the best defensive end prospect, I believe, that they have had with true production on the field in the last 10 years. And I know that's a big talk because of what Kayvon Thibodeau was, but I don't remember Kayvon Thibodeau performing the way that Uyunglele is. He is a baby. He's 19 years old. He still has baby fat, as Anthony would say. He's only going to get better. He's able to beat players with power. He's able to beat offensive linemen who are stronger than him, who are bigger than him. He's able to get that long arm, use technique, and get that leverage so that he can knock them off the ball with his power. He's able to run around them when you need big stops. Who seems to come up with them every single time? The true sophomore defensive end. Mateo Uyunglele has been massive this season, and don't be shocked if you start hearing him for that 2026 NFL draft and people talking about him as being a top 5 pick. He is that talented, and he's performing at an equal to higher level than what his talent is.
He affects the game pretty much like you talk about the Ducks not having somebody for the last 10 years. I mean, it's like all the way back to Haloti Ngata. He was like a top 10 overall pick, and even Igor Olshansky, who was like the best lineman the Ducks had on the defensive side for 3 seasons, he got drafted in the 2nd round, and now you're seeing right after Kayvon something better. I didn't think you could get better than Kayvon Thibodeau.
Are you DNU? Are you becoming DNU?
Boy,
because you have Kayvon Thibodeau come in.
Man.
He's a top 5 pick. And this isn't to downplay Kayvon Thibodeau,
Not at
because
all.
as a true prospect, Kayvon was rated higher than Mateo, which is hard to do. But Kayvon Thibodeau, I don't think that he quite had the production to this extent that Mateo has had.
Certainly not.
He had moments of pure brilliance that I don't know that even Mateo could necessarily touch.
His special flashes might have been the brightest of any flashes.
100%.
But Mateo's doing it over and over again, and he is always available for you.
And to a point, he's kind of overshadowed Birch. And that, again, that's not me dumping on Birch. Birch has been hurt. Birch, he's missed 3 games, right? And he has 8.5 sacks.
I think
he's been a wrecking ball himself.
Well, Birch has been the recipient of all the kind of like freak show
chaos.
hype. And just like that he's this otherworldly like
and he
physical prospect, and that is all true. But I think if anything, it's kind of kept the college football world from becoming aware of just how good Mateo Uyunglele is.
Yes,
and you're right. Given the extra games Mateo's played, I think he's had the better season. It doesn't mean he's the better player or the better draft prospect, but he's put together the best body of work maybe of anybody on that defensive side of the ball.
And it's when he shows up too. It's 3rd and short, and you need a big stop against Ohio State, and he beats an All-American to stop Ohio State from getting a first down, getting the ball back to your quarterback. When you need a sack and Ohio State is driving, who gets the sack? When you need a sack against Wisconsin, who's the guy who gets into the backfield?
He had your 3 biggest plays against Wisconsin.
He dropped into coverage and had one of the more impressive hits on a wide receiver, and he did it.
Stuck him short of the sticks.
He did it legally.
Yeah.
He was able to get underneath a wide receiver as a defensive end. You just don't see that. He had an interception in that game. When you needed a defensive stop, he had a freaking interception at that defensive end position. This kid is truly, truly special. And here's the best part of how special he is. We don't really even get to talk about Tatum Tuioti, who's a havoc wrecker himself.
Yeah.
Like, I feel bad. He's the 3rd musketeer.
And Derek Harmon had an awesome game today, too.
His fumble recovery.
Forgot about Derek Harmon as well. So, You just start going down the list. There's a bunch of really good players right now.
Jamari Caldwell had another good game today.
You go down the list and you have a bunch of really good, talented players that are getting overshadowed by other really good, talented players.
And
it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, and that is the recipe for doing something great collectively, and that's winning something big. So we'll see if they can put that together. The other guy that I wanted to mention on just briefly before we get into our final segment here, because of how far he's come, I will have to look up the name of the award again because it's a last name that is complicated and hard to say, but Bryce Betcher has been nominated for the award that goes to the best senior who started his career as a walk-on. And
Bullsworth.
Bullsworth, is that what it
Brian
is?
Bullsworth.
Okay.
I believe that is how you pronounce his name. He went to Arkansas. There's a movie. It's called Greater. Check it out. I would recommend.
But just what Bryce Betcher has done, a Eugene product, local kid who walks onto the baseball and football team and has become a flat-out star on both of them. And then we hear tonight from Dusty that he's essentially leading the emotional charge, coming out with the Inglourious Bastards-inspired baseball bat, swinging it out of the tunnel. But not only does he do that, and he also came out earlier this week and said, yeah, people can say it doesn't mean more. It does. I hate Washington. They hate us. I like that he leans into that and just owns it. He has been such an emotional leader for these guys. And you look at what he did in the stat sheet tonight, too. 11 tackles. He forces a fumble. He's hurrying. He's hitting. Tackles for losses. He is doing it all for you, and he never even got a scholarship offer. It's unbelievable, and it's such a cool story. I had a friend tell me tonight when Bryce Betcher opens up his car dealership in Eugene in 2040, I'm buying. The guy is a certified Eugene legend for what he's done on the diamond and the gridiron, and the fact that it all started for him right there in Eugene. Awesome story, and it's capped off with an awesome senior night for him.
Well, it also shows there are late bloomers sometimes.
Yes.
Not everyone reaches their full potential at 16 and 17 when most of these Big Ten players are getting their scholarship offers. So as a player, sometimes you do need to trust yourself and bet on yourself. Say, hey, I can be a good enough player to play baseball at Oregon. I can be a good enough athlete to play football at Oregon and stick with it. I mean, there have been multiple big-time transfers that have come in to play that linebacker position, and year after year, Bryce Betcher just keeps beating them out year after year after year.
And that's not because you don't have dudes there. It's because that guy has earned his keep.
They're talented too, but Bryce Betcher just keeps showing that he is a truly special player. He'll be one of those all-time Ducks, and I hope, I want for him to have the great baseball career that seems to be out in front of him, or the great football career if that's what he chooses to do also or instead of. But if it doesn't happen, he will be someone that walks around the campus of Oregon where, like, my little kids, if they end up becoming Oregon Ducks, will be like, oh, that's Bryce Betcher. That's that guy my dad always talks about being a great player.
Bryce Betcher.
Also, Brandon Burlsworth.
There you go. Burlsworth.
I had to go back. It's Brandon Burlsworth. He was a offensive lineman.
I
think you were thinking of the Boz.
I combined them.
Yeah, you said Bosworth, thinking of the Bosworth.
I thought it was an O. It's a U.
It's okay.
Guess what? Hawkins' an accent. It strikes again. He played O-line for Arkansas. I believe he was drafted by the Colts. It's a good
Let's
movie.
hope it's the Betcher Award by the end of the season. We got to wrap things up here on the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. Some big upsets in the top 25 today, what it means for the college football playoff, and a preview of Penn State that's coming up next. But first, we toss it back over to Schultze one more time for the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's online or in-store for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. It does look like there's an accident I-5 northbound getting out of Eugene near Coburg. I see 3 police officers, so a big old blanket of smokies in that area. So I'm assuming they are responding to something. Looks pretty heavy, at least an extra 10 minutes added to your drive. And then out of Eugene, okay, but then a bit of slowing in Albany, on I-5 northbound. And then near Woodburn, still looking at a smoky there as well. 37 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 36. Tomorrow, sunny and a high of 50.
Looking for a better primary care experience? Welcome to Zoom Care. Zoom Care is here for more than urgent needs. We can be your PCP too. Our primary care team has grown and is currently accepting new patients. Don't wait for the care you need. You can have your first visit with one of our many providers within 48 hours. And we take most insurances. Why wait weeks for an appointment when you can be seen today? Learn more about establishing primary care at zoomcare.com. Zoom Care. beyond better healthcare.
If you've been too busy to sign up for your health insurance plan, it's understandable. It's also why there's Health Markets. At healthmarkets.com, you can see the plans available to you and even speak to a licensed insurance agent. Just dial pound 250 and say Health Markets. They'll answer your questions, and when you're ready, even help you apply. Just dial pound 250 and say Health Markets. Getting your new health insurance plan could be easier than you think. Health Markets Insurance Agency, Inc. is licensed as an insurance agency nationwide except in Massachusetts.
It's time. Shop Black Friday savings now at Lowe's. Shop now and get up to 50% off select major appliances. Plus, get an extra 10% off when you buy a major appliance from Whirlpool, like the new Smart Range with air cooking and the new Wipe Clean coating. Lowe's knows deals. Lowe's knows home improvement. Valid 11/6 to 12/4. Selection varies by location. See Lowe's.com for details.
When you want Christmas music, head to 97.1 Charlie FM. This holiday season, 97.1 Charlie FM is Portland's fun Christmas music station.
Taste the warmth of the season with Victorico Mexican Food's flavorful, homemade-style pozole. Hey, it's Dusty. For a limited time only, Victorico's is offering pozole. It's perfect on a chilly day. Pick up your favorites in-store or online at victoricos.com. Duck fans, game day is here, and you need fuel to cheer on Oregon. Hey, it's Dusty, and at Victorico's Mexican Food, we know the game doesn't wait, so neither should you. Swing by before kickoff for mouth-watering burritos, tacos, quesadillas, and more. All served up fast and with the quality you crave. Whether you're tailgating or watching from home, Victorico's has you covered. Get in, get out, and get back to the action. Fueling Duck fans with restaurant-quality food, ready in no time. Pick up in-store or order for takeout or delivery at victoricos.com.
Headed out on the town or maybe just running some errands, but worried you haven't charged enough to make it everywhere? Whew. Don't stress. Shell has a growing network of reliable EV charging sites at popular retail locations and Shell gas stations. So you can pull up, plug in, and venture out. Now that's convenient. Shell Recharge. Download the Shell app today to find the nearest Shell Recharge location. For more information on locations and how Shell measures reliability, visit shell.us/Shell Recharge.
Gabriel with a stamp from under center, rolling to his left. Wants to keep, now wants to throw, got him open in the end zone. Touchdown, Terrence Ferguson was behind everybody. I thought Gabriel was going to run it. He really sold that because the Huskies just did not stay back.
This is the Pacific Office Automation Post-Game Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Columnist for the Seattle Times, Mike Vorel, writing about this Oregon-Washington game, and he's got a quote from Dan Lanning on what a win over Washington means. I didn't think that Dan would divulge this, as he plays things pretty close to the vest, but Dan said, quote, "It means a lot. I mean, I go to bed every night thinking about them, and I wake up every morning thinking about them, so it's nice to be able to think about a win, too."
Well, hey, you know what? That shows you that you have a coach that truly does care. And he's been honest. When games have meant more, see the Ohio State game, Dan Lanning has owned up to it. There's a lot of coaches that'll try and come in and say, oh, it's all the same. It's just a nameless, faceless opponent. But sometimes you have to truly admit, this isn't a nameless, faceless opponent. This is a rivalry game. And you have to find a way to win it because you haven't done it in your last 3 chances. Look at Ryan Day. He tries to go into those games against Michigan, and he says, oh, it's just another game, and then you get smacked because it's not just another game.
No.
If you don't prepare for it the correct way, which is harder than you ever have before, your rival will come up and they'll get you.
Coach Lanning just being that, obviously very well put together coach, very organized. It is still so nice to see, that honesty. Just it makes him that regular guy. It makes him sound like that fan.
Yeah, and I think it makes him sound human because I think a lot of these coaches have become give 110% robots and Dan, for as regimented and as structured as he is, he'll let you in a little bit. And I remember him telling Dusty after the Ohio State game, like, Dusty said, does this one mean a little bit more? And he paused and he's like, you know what it actually does.
I want to say no,
I want to say no, but I got to say that it does. And And this is one of those instances, too. He'd love to say no. It's just us getting to 12-0. It's just us finishing off the regular season. But he knows he's thought about this every day for the last year or 2 years because it's the only team that has continued to beat him. And now he's gotten his one in the win column as well. Hopefully many more for him for Dan over the Huskies to come in the future. But the big thing that happened opposite Oregon today happened over in Columbus, Ohio. It is the Michigan-Ohio State game, the game as they call it, and it finished with Michigan 13, Ohio State 10, nearly a 3-touchdown underdog. Michigan prevails. There's a flag planting incident at the 50-yard line after the game. There's a fight that breaks out. There's mace that comes out. There's a flag that's getting ripped away from players by former players who are then retired NFL players. It's a whole thing going on. But
it was awesome.
But
it was awesome.
And then it set off a flag stabbing epidemic as we saw Texas try to do it at Texas A&M today. We successfully saw it happen at North Carolina, NC State as well.
Arizona State, they stabbed the pitchfork in.
They put the pitchfork in.
Yes.
So I don't know about all this flag business. What I do know is that the College Football Playoff got yet another shakeup. I think it was becoming presumed going into this week that it was going to be Oregon 1, Ohio State 5, or flipped if the Big Ten championship game went the other way. That's not going to be the case anymore. So certainly I would still have to believe as the only undefeated team left in the entire landscape, even if Oregon loses the Big Ten championship game to Penn State, I feel like it would be hard to see them slipping below that 5 spot. Maybe it would be a 6 spot, but the bigger thing now is that next 5 opponent, if you win, likely going to be very different.
Yeah, I mean, as you go through it right now, I think a general consensus or a general idea is that the Big Ten is going to get 4 teams. You're going to get Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, and Indiana. The SEC, you're going to get 4. Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and then either Ole Miss or Bama. It does seem like the lean is towards Bama right now. You're going to get an ACC champ. You're going to get a Big 12 champ. Notre Dame, after losing to Northern Illinois at home week 2, has come roaring back. They're clearly going to be in. They don't have another game.
They couldn't have taken a second loss, too.
Exactly.
They needed that.
They had to win every single game, and they did in dominating fashion for the most part. And then you're probably going to get Boise if Boise's able to fend off UNLV. So when I look at this, I think there's a world, with Oregon, if things don't go your way against Penn State, I think they're going to go your way against Penn State, to be
More
honest
on that
with
in a
you.
moment.
If they don't go your way, you're probably the 5. If Texas ends up falling to Georgia, but it's a little bit closer, I think there's a chance that they're the 5 if Oregon wins. If Oregon loses, I think they're pretty much guaranteed that 5 spot. But I think if Texas and Oregon win, I think Notre Dame is going to be the 5 seed.
Interesting.
The more and more that I look at it, like, you can't put a 2-loss Ohio State team there, I don't think. They're close losses. They've lost 2 games by a combined 4 points. But it's not like they've looked all that great the last couple of games. They didn't look great against Penn State. They just had more talent than Penn State. And then, frankly, they had more talent than Michigan, and they knew Michigan couldn't do the one thing that everyone does in football now, and that's throw the football forward. And Michigan still found a way to beat them.
Looking at the ESPN straw poll right now, they polled all of their college football writers about what they project the playoff standings to look like coming up here, and most of them, I would say probably 70% of them look like they have Notre Dame in that 5 spot. Some of them have Penn State in that 5 spot. Others have Texas there because they think that they could lose to Georgia.
Yes.
So, which is certainly a possibility. Anything can happen in a
after
conference
the
championship game.
After the last time they faced them, Georgia's D-line destroyed Texas's O-line. And in the second half, it got a little bit closer. I didn't feel like Texas moved the ball all that well, although are you going to get the same kind of turnover luck that you had? Because it's not like Georgia's offense was dominant in that first half.
Right.
They just kept getting the ball on the 30-yard line.
Yep.
It's a lot easier to score when you got to go 30 yards.
Also interesting in the current projections after Ohio State lost, The Athletic puts Ohio State v. Indiana as the 7 versus 10. So you got a Big Ten matchup in the first round there. Yeah, rematch. And what that could eventually lead to is another Oregon rematch against Ohio State if they happen to make it to the championship game, because they are now on opposite sides of the bracket with Ohio State.
And it's funny. I thought that Ohio State could be a team that Oregon would face down the road again in the playoff bracket specifically, not just in the Big Ten championship game. After what I saw from them and their, frankly, anemic offense against Michigan today, now I don't know. I'm again starting to wonder who the biggest threats are for Oregon in their path through the playoff, and we'll have plenty to talk about on Ducks Roundtable in regards to that. But we know that coming up next week, 5 o'clock in Indianapolis, the Oregon Ducks playing for the Big Ten title against the Penn State Nittany Lions. The initial line out there from Circa Sports, Ducks by 3.5. Your initial thoughts, Will?
That seems low. I think that Oregon has a better defense than Ohio State, and I think Ohio State's defense absolutely shut down that Penn State offense.
Yeah.
I think that Oregon will shut them down, and I think Oregon has a more dynamic offense than Ohio State does. I think that Oregon is going to get the job done. I think they cover.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Penn State, I'm just so excited to say that they have not faced a team like Oregon this year. I am going to hammer... I am going to hammer that line probably with money I don't have. That's not a good thing.
Makes me concerned that we're all going to be hammering that line and laying the points because I also feel the Ducks could roll this one. But alas, we will talk about that more in Ducks Roundtable on Monday. For Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz, for Anthony Newman, and for Dusty Hare, I'm Ryan Buckley. This has been the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. The Ducks winners, 49-21. Good night, everybody.
This has been the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show, brought to you by Coors Light. Pacific